Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. And in this lecture, we're going to create a GitHub account and then push our repository from our code base to our GitHub repository. So this is an awesome video where this is our first step to being able to deploy our application. So the first thing you need to do is head over to github.com. And when you get here, you'll know because you get this little globe that you can grab and move around where you can see different commits going on all over the world. It's super, super cool animation that you can mess with. But once you're here, where the world builds software, you can click sign in or sign up. Sign in if you already have an account, sign up if you need to make one. Once you click sign up, it's going to walk you through a pretty cool process on creating your first GitHub repository. But I already have an account, so I'm just going to sign in and I'm going to return back to the video once I log in. Alright, now once you make a GitHub account or you sign in, you're going to go to your repositories. So once you click repositories, it's going to show you all of your repositories that you have. You can make private or public repositories. From here, I'm going to click new repository, and this is how we're going to push our code base to a new remote repository. Here we get to call our repository whatever we want. I'm going to use Fast API. You can do the same thing. The name is going to be your username / your repository name. So you can copy my names if you want because it's going to be your username / your repository name. So I'm just going to name my repository Fast API. And I'm going to make it public, which means anybody can see this. If you do not want anybody to see yours, you can say private. And you know what? I'm actually going to change it to private. So we have a public and private. Public, anybody can see your repositories. Private can only be you. And here in the initialize this repository, you can say with a readme, with a git ignore, which means with our git, we can ignore certain files that will not be added to our git. We don't need to add anything for now. Just click create repository. And boom, we have our username / Fast API repository made. And here it's telling us how to create new stuff for our application. Now this first command, echo pound fast API, this will create a readme.md file. But if you're following along in the application, I already have a readme file. If you do not in your application, feel free to type that in your terminal. Next, it's going to say add the readme, but really we want to add our entire application after we git init it. So let's initialize our git first. I'm going to start by saying git init in our parent directory of our Fast API application. Now that everything is initialized, I'm going to say git status. And here we can see everything that's about to get added to our git. So our remote repository. Now, one thing I do not want added in here is this Fast API env. That is because there's a ton of files in our Fast API environment. And this Fast API env is used only for our local. When we deploy this application, that operating system or wherever we're going to be deploying it, which is Heroku for this application, is going to download everything and create its own environment. So this is specific to our local environment. So we don't necessarily want to add this to our remote repository. To do this in PyCharm, we can just right click it, head down to where it says git, and then we can say add to git ignore, and then add to git ignore. And like I said, our git ignore is something that we can add, which is going to be a file to our application, which says we do not want this item to be added to our git. So it's going to say, do you want to create a new file? I'm just going to say yes, create this file and add it to our repository. So now inside our git ignore, we have our Fast API env, which is this entire folder which holds a ton of files. Now let's do a git status. And now we can see our .idea, which is our cache for our PyCharm, more PyCharm cache, to-dos DB, template static routers. We got all of the main files for our application. Now I'm going to say git add all. And if we say git status again, we can see all of our files for our application have been staged. Now if we go back to GitHub after adding our README, but we really added everything, we want to git commit our first change. So I'm going to follow this exactly. So I'm going to say git commit -m first commit. And then I'm going to say git branch -m main. This is renaming our master branch to main. And then we need to say git remote add origin, which is going to add a new origin to our path to our remote branch or our remote repository. And now for this last one, git push. I'm going to add this to our application for now, but I'm not going to press enter. And the reason being is GitHub is going to require a password for our application, but not your actual password to be able to log into your application or log into your username. It's a different kind of password. So what it actually wants you to do is to create a token. So I'm going to hover over my account and go to settings. I'm going to scroll down until you see developer settings. And then I'm going to click on personal access tokens. And I'm going to say generate a new token. I'm going to name this token Fast API. I'm going to make sure this token lasts for 30 days. And you can change it to 7 days, 60 days, 90 days. I'm actually going to make it 7 days. And I'm going to give it full rights to my entire username. What this is saying is if you have this access token, you can pretty much do whatever you want. This is your token, and make sure you save this token to a safe spot. And then after this, I'm going to go back into our PyCharm and click git push -u origin main. And you're going to get the first time authentication failed. But if you do it again, you're going to get a pop-up of a GitHub add-on. Head over to the token, and now paste that token in that you just copied, and click sign in. Once you do that, your validation is going to be complete, and you just pushed your change to the main branch. So now if you go back into your GitHub, and you head over to your repositories, you can see that I now have a new Fast API repository on GitHub that was added 17 seconds ago. And if you click on this Fast API, we're going to see our commit with all of our changes. So there we have it. You have your Git remote branch or your remote repository on GitHub. That is fantastic. Awesome job. This wraps up this lecture on getting our application onto a remote branch or a remote repository on GitHub. And I will see you in the next video.